Welcome into the Commanders Report. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today we got some more Commanders coaching news to discuss. First up, we're going to let you guys know on the latest surrounding the defensive coordinator search here in Washington. A couple more interviews for the Commanders at the DC position. Then we'll get into newly hired offensive coordinator David Blough's offense and what exactly the plan is going to be schematically here in Washington now that they have promoted their up-and-coming new OC. Now, before we get into the content today, make sure you guys click that subscribe button because just like we did on Friday evening when the Commanders officially hired David Blough as their next offensive coordinator, when that hire comes in for the defensive coordinator, we will also be getting you guys a video, whether it's a live show, whether it's an at-home breaking news video like we did on Friday evening. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button for the very latest surrounding the Washington Commanders. And guys, coaching changes is just the beginning this offseason. I'm expecting a full roster rehaul, all this different stuff. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button to never miss a move the Commanders make here in 2026. All right, so the Commanders did have two more defensive coordinator interviews since the last time we talked here on the channel. It was Joe Cullen, who actually interviewed last Friday for the defensive coordinator position. He's currently the Kansas City Chiefs defensive line coach. He has been there for a while. Then also former Tennessee Titans defensive coordinator Dennard Wilson interviewed for the position as well. These two men joined Patrick Graham as the only other candidate that is actually interviewed for this position to this point. The Commanders are definitely, going at a snail's pace here. They're not, going out there quickly, getting all these OC and DC candidates lined up. They only had a few interviews before they hired David Blough, and they've only had a couple on the DC side at this point. In terms of what styles of defenses these guys would bring to the table, of course, Cullen has worked under defensive coordinator there in Kansas City, Steve Spagnuolo, for quite a while now. Cullen is known as one of the more respected defensive line coaches in the National Football League. And if he is going to be bringing over that Kansas City Chiefs style of defense, that, of course, would be inspired by Steve Spagnuolo, or at least you would think that it would be, where it's very, blitz heavy. It's a lot of, different styles of zone blitzes, all that different stuff. But, my question when it comes to Cullen is, would he be bringing that style, lots of blitzes, lots of pre-snap disguises, lots of post-snap rotations, all that different stuff? Would he be bringing that style of defense here to Washington, or would he kind of be under the thumb of Dan Quinn? That was kind of the case with Joe Whitt Jr. Honestly, guys, I feel like Joe Whitt Jr. was a little bit of a scapegoat for the defense here in Washington. I do think Dan Quinn as a play caller was better than Joe Whitt Jr., and that showed. But, Dan Quinn has been driving the ship schematically from a defensive perspective ever since he took over as the head coach of the Washington Commanders. So it would make sense that maybe he would bring in somebody that would be, another yes man, another, person that would just go along with whatever Dan Quinn wants to do. And hey, he's the head coach. If he wants something done on the defensive side of the ball from a schematic standpoint, that's exactly what's going to happen. But Dennard Wilson, if he comes in, he would be running a McDonald big nickel scheme that we've been seeing, get completely popularized with the Mike McDonald, scheme there in Seattle and in Baltimore. And then, of course, the various disciples from McDonald that have been picked from that, recent Baltimore Ravens staff, where, of course, Dennard Wilson was a part of that staff. He was a DB coach on that staff, and he coordinated the Tennessee Titans defense this season, and obviously that defense, not a ton of talent on there. They weren't able to really do a whole lot on the defensive side of the ball with him calling plays there. But if you guys are wondering what kind of the tenets of a Mike McDonald defense are and kind of what makes this style of defense a very modern defense that usually generates really good results, well, they base out of nickel, okay? In the modern NFL, spread passing game, quarterbacks that can sling it all over the yard. All right, the nickel personnel allows you to have more speed on the field. Also, two high safeties is another tenet of this defense where you're not going down and bringing down that strong safety into the box all that often. Usually you're playing with two safeties in a quarters alignment, so that's not truly a deep safety, but they're kind of crept up. They can help out in the run fit in certain types of run fit schemes there. And then also, that gives the defense ambiguity. They can rotate to a cover 3 or a cover 1. They can stay in a quarters look. They can go quarter, half. They can play Tampa. alpha. The offense has no idea what the opposing defense is doing when they're in that kind of quarters alignment with those safeties. So the safeties are very important to this defense. Also, McDonald and his disciples are known for their exotic blitzes and sim pressures. They like to send linebackers and then drop defensive linemen out into coverage. So you need a lot of versatility all over this defense for it to work. And then they do run a lot of quarters and match coverage. So whether that's palms, whether that's quarters, all right, whether that's cover 7, rip Liz, match, there's a lot of different stuff that they run in these defenses. That's part of what makes it so difficult to go up against, but they typically tend to go towards the match world as opposed to country zone, or whether that be just straight up man coverage. So that's kind of the 4 tenets of what Dennard Wilson would be bringing here to Washington. That is, if Dan Quinn allows him to run that scheme here in Washington. Dan is kind of known as more of that, cover 3 single high safety type of guy. He's modernized his defense a little bit over the years, but he still runs that, pretty, same scheme that he's run over the last several years. And Patrick Graham is the other candidate that they have interviewed. And the thing that I like about Patrick Graham, guys, is how multiple he is. He has run a bunch of different styles of defenses based on the personnel that he has. I think a tenet of a good coach is that they're capable of, adjusting and, kind of adjusting the style of defense that they run based on the personnel that they have to work with. They don't try to, fit square pegs into round holes. They find solutions with the players that they have on the roster and use their strengths and their weaknesses to their advantage. I think Patrick Graham is one of those guys. Came up under Bill Belichick, who was one of the most famous examples of that type of coach that would adjust his scheme based on the personnel that he had there in New England, and he certainly took that philosophy with him to New York and to Las Vegas. So that's definitely a name to keep your eye on here. But if you had to choose between these 3 defensive coordinator candidates, these are the 3 guys that we know of that have interviewed for the position as of right now. Which one would you pick? Type PG for Patrick Graham, type JC for Joe Cullen, or type DW for Dennard Wilson? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. For today's pinned question, in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Harry's. And while I tell you about our sponsor today, let me know between these 3, which one are you picking to be the next DC of the Washington Commanders? Now let's have a word from our sponsor today at Harry's. And guys, life is all about continual improvement, and that includes the quality of the products that you use every single day. Your phone is practically a supercomputer in your pocket. Cars can even drive themselves now. Your headphones cancel outside noise like magic, but your razor is likely still flimsy, overpriced, and still stuck back in 2008. That's where our friends at Harry's Plus come in. Harry's Plus has an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face, refined blade tech for a close, smoother shave, and a weighted metal handle, which is Harry's heaviest handle ever for added control and comfort. It feels like an expensive shave without having to break the bank. With Harry's Plus, each blade is honed at 3 different angles to cut hair cleanly at the root without tugging. Blade spacing is optimized to glide smoothly and avoid clogging, and every cartridge includes a lubricating strip with aloe and vitamin E to calm skin while you shave. But maybe the best part about Harry's Plus is how affordable it is. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany, which means no outsourcing and no middlemen, and because they control the entire process from steel to shelf, they keep costs low and pass the savings on to you. And if you don't love your shave with Harry's Plus, Harry's is going to make it right with you, no questions asked. Their risk-free trial means there's 0 downside to giving them a shot. And just to show you guys, I actually do use and love Harry's products. I've been using them since college. I actually brought my Harry's Plus razor with me here today. And the thing that I love about Harry's, guys, is it gives you that barbershop quality, high quality shave. I also really like their shaving cream as well, their shaving gel, as well as their post-shave balm. I've been using it since college. And the reason why, I've been using Harry's since college is because I love the quality of the products, but I don't have to break the bank every time I refill my razors. Also, their shave gel and post-shave balm smell terrific, and I wouldn't think about using any other men's grooming company other than Harry's at this point, guys. So for a limited time only, our listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/chat. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, 1 refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head on over to harrys.com/chat to claim this offer, and after your purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Big thank you to Harry's for sponsoring today's edition of the Commanders Report. So there's a report going out there that Raheem Morris, recently fired former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, heavily tied to the Washington Commanders defensive coordinator job, may not coach next season. There's some rumors floating around out there that because Morris has a great personality, he would be great on television, and because Atlanta's going to be paying him anyway, he still has this contract active, obviously, even though he's been fired. Atlanta has to pay him millions of dollars next year, whether he coaches or not. He could very comfortably go into the studio next year, make a couple more $1 million there, and just have a less stressful job. I mean, that is certainly an option if Raheem decides to do that. But if I know Raheem and the way people talk about him, he is a football guy through and through, and something tells me he's going to take some sort of job instead of going to TV at this stage in his career. He's still a pretty darn young man. But right now, Morris is focused on head coaching interviews, not coordinator interviews. So if the Washington Commanders want to land him, they're going to have to be patient. They're going to have to be patient before Raheem's opportunities to be a head coach this year dry up, and then they can potentially hire him to be the next defensive coordinator. The fact that the Commanders are taking the defensive coordinator search so slowly at this point does maybe indicate that Raheem is their number one choice, but we'll just have to see how everything plays out. Another big contender for Raheem is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin is very close with Raheem Morris. They're like best friends, so if they move on from their defensive coordinator in Pittsburgh, Terrell Austin, I think Raheem would probably go to Pittsburgh before he comes to Washington. That's just my personal opinion, though. And then another guy that the Commanders could have considered for defensive coordinator, but it seems like the Falcons are not interested in letting him go, is former defensive coordinator under Raheem Morris, Jeff Ulbrich. The Cowboys requested a DC interview with Ulbrich, and the Falcons denied the Cowboys access to him. So Arthur Blank, the Falcons owner, has said that he does plan on keeping Ulbrich. He's gonna suggest to the new head coach that he hires to hire Ulbrich as the defensive coordinator and keep him on. But there is still the possibility that the new head coach in Atlanta doesn't want him, has his own guy, and Ulbrich could still be made available. But I think at this point, more than likely, Jeff Ulbrich will be back in Atlanta. So predict it for me down there in the comment section. Who's going to be the next defensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders? Is it somebody like Raheem Morris? Is it one of the three guys that the Commanders have already interviewed? Or is it going to be somebody else? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section, what you guys think and who you think is going to be the next DC of the Commanders. All right, so now let's shift over to newly hired offensive coordinator David Blough. And this is my first video I'm doing in studio talking about Blough, talking about his offense, and talking about exactly what he brings to the table as the new offensive play caller for the Washington Commanders. Now, the first thing you need to know about Blough is that he has three major influences, according to him, okay? Ben Johnson, former Lions offensive coordinator and current Bears head coach, all right? Blough played under Ben Johnson's offense, when he spent multiple seasons in Detroit. That is his main influence, but that he did spend the final year of his playing career in Arizona with Kliff Kingsbury in Washington. And then, of course, he joins the Washington Commanders coaching staff when Kingsbury gets hired as the OC a couple years ago. But also, he did have a short stint with Kevin O'Connell. So that is a slight influence there that's worth mentioning. But I would say the two biggest ones are Ben Johnson and Kliff Kingsbury. Now, what this offense likely is not going to be is a carbon copy and paste, Kliff Kingsbury offense. All right, the difference between Kliff and Dan Quinn and Kliff and the front office is that they wanted to go in a different direction schematically. They wanted to run the ball more. They wanted to go under center more. And Kliff Kingsbury, being an air raid style guy and a spread guy, wanted to stay in the shotgun and the pistol. So that's going to be probably one of the major big changes that we see with David Blough, is that he will go under center, and he's probably willing to run the ball a little bit more than Kliff Kingsbury was. But obviously, Kliff's fingerprints will still be in this offense to some degree. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But my guess is Dan Quinn's vision for this offense is to make it similar to Ben Johnson's offense, okay? Because David Blough spent multiple seasons there in Detroit, obviously learning that playbook, all that different stuff, and apparently he demonstrated enough in his interview to be like, this guy could be the next Ben Johnson, because, this is one of of the more popular styles of offenses in the National Football League today. Get under center, play action, throw the ball down the field, be creative with trick plays, and really prioritize the run game. That's really the core tenets of the Ben Johnson offense there. It's referred to by some as modern pro style, where the classic pro style offense is your under center and 3-step drop, 5-step drop, 7-step drop, all that different stuff, and you're still doing that stuff. Probably not 7-step drops anymore, or at least not as many, but it's been modernized. You're using modern concepts brought over from the Shanahan tree and all that different stuff. Ben Johnson's offense is really a beautiful mix of classic pro style offense with old school West Coast with new school Shanahan stuff, and it really is a beautiful blend of all of that, of all those different schemes all put into one. The offense really does base under center. You guys can see that with Jared Goff, and you guys can see that now with Caleb Williams in Chicago. It is an under center offense that allows a couple different things. Number one, the run game, the angles for the run game and the running backs are better when you're under center as opposed to when you're in pistol or when you're in shotgun. Okay, so this offense being an under center offense, I think is good for the Washington Commanders moving forward. Also, you don't just conscript yourself to one style of run scheme. It's not like they're going to be running all power or all zone. They're going to be mixing it up. They're going to be keeping defenses on their toes, just like Ben Johnson does in Chicago, and he did in Detroit. It's also very heavy play action, so the defense once again has to be on their toes. Is this a run? Is this a pass? It's going to open up space over the middle of the field because the linebackers will be coming up to play their run fits. It really just marries all of your concepts together, and it allows you to attack down the field without the defense really knowing that you're going to be passing the ball down the field. It really is the best way, in my opinion, to run a pro offense, and then also trick play creativity. And we saw that with David Blough. He actually brought in a couple of trick plays that the Commanders used over the last several years, and I'm excited to see what Blough can bring to the table from a creative standpoint, because we know Ben Johnson is one of the best in the world at coming up with those trick plays that get those big explosive plays in some big moments. I'm guessing that will be a tenet of this Washington Commanders offense as well. But make no mistake, this is not going to be a completely brand new offense in the way of we're going to have brand new verbiage or nothing is going to cross over from the year before, anything like that. I think that there will be some Kliff Kingsbury stuff in here, specifically in the quarterback run game. All right, when they do go shotgun, when they are in pistol, they are going to have that stuff available to them. And obviously, Jaden Daniels and everybody else is going to be very familiar with that stuff because that's what they've been running these last 2 years. And my favorite part about David Blough getting this job, guys, is specifically because of Jaden Daniels. And Blough has been here through the 2-year journey to this point that Jaden was drafted and then developed here in Washington. So Blough has about as good of an understanding as anybody in the world, maybe other than Kliff Kingsbury and Tavita Pritchard and Dan Quinn, as to who Jaden is as a quarterback at this point, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are. Obviously, Blough knows the verbiage that Kliff was using in this offense before, and he can help that transition into this under center kind of pro style offense from what was a very shotgun heavy air raid style offense easier for a guy like Jaden Daniels, and it could make the growing pains heading into next year a bit less because he can translate between the Kliff Kingsbury offense and the Ben Johnson offense, if you will, making that transition easier for a third-year quarterback that you're expecting to have a breakout season next year in this new offense. But really my biggest question when it comes to David Blough as the new offensive play caller here in Washington is he ready for this big of a jump? I mean, he was just an assistant to somebody in the room. Like, he wasn't like running the quarterbacks the last 2 years. He was the backup and he was the assistant to the guy running the quarterbacks in that room. Obviously, he has some level of understanding on how it works, and he did have a close relationship with Kliff Kingsbury and all that different stuff. But obviously, this is a big jump to go from an assistant position coach all the way to offensive coordinator in just your third year coaching is a very, very big jump. Okay, so this is going to be something to keep your eye on in year one. How does he handle situations? How does he handle organizing this group and keeping everybody in meetings engaged? All that different stuff is going to play a factor in his first year. I have a feeling he's going to be just fine at it, but certainly for somebody that hasn't been in coaching for that long to be given this much responsibility, that has to be a question that is just going to linger as we head into his first season as the offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. Now, grade the hire for me down there in the comment section. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. Give me your thoughts on David Blough as the new offensive coordinator of the Commanders. Should Washington have waited for a guy like Mike McDaniel or somebody else to become available? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. A, B, C, D, or F. For me, I'm going to give it an A-. All right, now that'll be it for today's show, guys. I really appreciate you guys stopping by this afternoon. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'll have more Commanders content for you guys tomorrow and all throughout this week, so make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Till next time, guys, go raise some hail.